dun, 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 dun. What's up, everybody? Dancing, dancing, dancing. She's a dancing machine. Is this even live? Can you all hear me? Sign into chat. What do you mean? I'm the owner of the channel. Why do I gotta sign into chat? Hey, can y'all hear me? Or do I need to hit go live on the thing? Oh no, it says it's live. Alright, cool. So you guys should be able to hear me. Hear you but can't see you. Alright, perfect. That is by design, Billy Bob Robertson. Nobody wants to see my ugly ass face. So yeah, let's go ahead and do this. Please go follow me on social media at Sir Hunts. Twitter, Sir_Hunts. Instagram, I know it says Sir_Hunts, but it's also Sir_Hunts_reviews. And then here on YouTube at Sir Hunts. Fucking your mom. No, I'm just kidding. Sir Hunts Review. Ooh, here I am. Here I stand, man. Wait, why is it showing the chat? It should be showing my patrons. There we go. Alright, so cool. We're going to be doing this live for everyone to see. The chat should be popping up. Where is it? Why is it not? It always does this. Am I going to have to refresh it? I'll refresh this joint. Alright, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully the chat will show up eventually. Maybe somebody could type something. Let me see if that shows up. I'm going to try to type something. It's weird how that's the one thing that don't work. I mean, it does, but not all the time. Sign into chat. You just made me do this. I just did this. Hey. Test. Alright, that should have made the chat pop up, if it's going to pop up. This is crazy. This is insane. It's the top thing. It's the number one source. But it's still not popping up. Alright, well, anyway. This is about 12 hours earlier than it was going to be. Tonight at 8 was the original time. But, you know, life happens. Yeah, why is the chat not popping up? That's crazy. I'm going to delete the source and then... I mean, it's showing up there, but that's a window capture. It's not supposed to do that. Let me try again. Shit. Oh, yeah, there it goes. But now it's over there. I got to move it to here. I'll make it bigger. All right, cool. All right, there we go. Let's get started. All right, so, you know, I haven't done these in a while, but I was doing them every week. A giveaway. Going to do one. You see this lovely, you know, Damon painting behind me. The artist who did that, his name is Jay Fox. Now, to win the giveaway for this live stream, you kind of got to watch the whole thing. I'm going to do the giveaway at the end. I'm sorry. Come back in about an hour and a half if you don't want to watch me talk about House of the Dragon. So what you got to do is you got to go follow Jay Fox on Instagram, right? Then once you do that, if you win, you get to pick one of his prints, you know, obviously a Song of Ice and Fire related or whatever, on his Instagram, and you let me know which one you want. I'm going to message him, then I'm going to send you a copy. Like, it sounds like it's not, like it's just like a picture or something, but when I say copy, I mean like it's a digital, like, print, right? So if I were to print it off from the, you know, image file or whatever on my phone that he sends me, it would look just like the actual painting itself, aside from it being a digital print, right? So yeah, one person will win that. I actually just did a giveaway the other day on my Patreon for 2 different people, and that's exciting because, you know, before I was giving away my own art, and I'm not the best at doing that. So yeah, Jay Fox is an official artist out of the UK. The man's talented. You know, you all can always see Damon behind me, and it's going to be that way. All right, so if you're unaware, actually, you know what? Let me discuss this quick theory that I sort of have. It's not even a theory, but y'all know how the High Sparrow makes Cersei walk naked through the streets of King's Landing. You know, the Walk of Shame. that actually happens to Cersei's stepmom, right? So Tywin, so this would be Cersei's step-grandma, right? So Tywin's father, Tytos, I believe is his name, he was married. Then after his wife died, he had this girlfriend who would wear his dead wife's jewelry. So this is Tywin's stepmom, Cersei's stepmother. Not really step because they were never technically married, but just like, this whore that that Tytos starts banging after his wife dies, right? But she would like parade herself in their mother's jewels. She would wear their dresses. She kind of does what Sansa starts to do in the Vale, but then Peter stops her and he's like, "Look, you can't wear. Do I need to tell you this? I shouldn't have to tell you this, but don't wear House Aaron colors because that's stupid, right?" Like Littlefinger's like, "Why? How would it look if my daughter, my bastard daughter, is wearing my dead wife's dresses? It won't look good, right?" So anyway. This woman who Tywin's father is dating does this, right? So after Tytos dies and Tywin becomes Lord of Casterly Rock, he makes her do a walk of shame, pretty much. He has her walk through the streets of Lannisport, and she is like stoned and stuff, and like it's a really shameful thing. If I'm not mistaken, she's not actually naked, but she's wearing a dress, right? So it made me think like, okay, that's one of the terrible things that Tywin's done. He's done a bunch, right? Another thing is that he killed a bunch of people known as the Rains of Tarbuck by trapping them in a cave and filling it with water. And it was said that you could hear the screams of the people inside the caves for days afterwards. Tywin is sick, right? But the whole reason why he did this is because the Rains were basically testing his manhood. They were like, "Bro, you ain't gonna do shit. We're gonna keep taking out loans from the Lannisters. We're not gonna pay back those loans. The Lannisters ain't gonna do shit. Tytos is a fool. All he does is get laughed at." That's one of the reasons why Tywin hates laughter. He thinks that people are secretly making fun of him. And like, early on, he's right. People were. The Mad King would make japes at his expense, and that was like sort of when Tywin reached his wits' end, because initially Tywin and the Mad King were like best friends when they were growing up. So anyway, it made me think like, what if this High Sparrow dude, High Septon, right? What if he is akin to the whore that Tywin made walk through the streets, and then he did that to Cersei? Not really a theory, I know, it's kind of loose. But then also another one would be that potentially maybe he's a long-lost Tarbeck, right? So, yeah, that was kind of it. So let's get on to Cregan Stark, all right? Cregan Stark comes from a clan or culture of individuals known as the Northmen. Now, you may think, oh yes, the Northmen, just like Ned. Actually, no. The Northmen, not in the current timeline, in the main timeline of Song of Ice and Fire, it's like 300 AC, so it's 300 years after Aegon's conquest. Right now, all the Starks that we are getting to know are children, so they are sort of becoming into the individuals who history will remember them as. But let's not pretend they're all really good. The TV show sort of took out all of the... People say they took out the magic, but they also took out like the darker elements to being a Stark and like being someone of the North. It's like they have to do certain things because of the environment they live in that makes them different from anybody else in not just the Seven Kingdoms, but also we don't really hear about too many cultures that do similar things to them, except for when you go really, really far east to the far ends of Essos, and the knowledge and history that we have from that far over there is not really that credible, because very few, in fact, no maesters have traveled far enough east to reach the ends of the world, so to speak, and then come back with all of that information. So a lot of that, the tales and the history and the historical figures and stuff, it's all passed down from, a group of people that interacted with the Maester. The Maester took that information back to the Citadel. Sometimes they'll take artifices or artifacts or whatever, history books back with them. Ultimately, I think the big thing to know about book Starks is that they're dark, dark people, right? So Arya is a double skin changer. Okay, I'm making my way to Cregan. Don't worry, it's gonna be, kind of long. All right, so Arya is a double face changer. What I mean by that is she can warg from Bravos all the way to the Riverlands where Nymeria is. That's insane. It's a really far distance. Now, mind you, she kind of does this subconsciously because it mostly happens when she's dreaming. But ultimately, she's got a really strong connection to her direwolf. So she's a skin changer in that sense. She's a warg, right? But then also, she's becoming a faceless man. And becoming a faceless man is another way of skin changing. Literally, it's a form of warging without actually having the bloodline of the First Men or the bloodline of the Children of the Forest and the Starks, right? Well, I say Starks, but really it's the First Men blood who mingled with some of the Green Seers from the Children of the Forest, who are really, they're called singers. The First Men call them the Children of the Forest because they're so small. So that's not even an accurate name. The singers intermixed with the First Men and passed some of their gifts on. So, the Faceless Men and Bravos have a similar ability to change skins, to change faces. And, when Arya does it for the first time, it's not quite as simple as how the TV show makes it look. And even how the book describes it at first, because Arya doesn't really know what she's looking at. She doesn't realize that there's some other stuff happening there. So when she sees Jack and Hagar do it, he kind of just puts his hand over his face, and then it's changed, right? He looks like an entirely different person. But when Arya gets down to Bravos and she's in the House of Black and White and she's putting on her first face, she has to have her forehead slit, and she puts the mask. It's like the little girl is this, the identity that she's assuming, the skin she's taking on is this little girl who was beat by her father all the time. She had a broken nose, broken jaw. She was known as like this ugly bitch. I'm just kidding. That was mean. She's known as the ugly little girl, right? So when Arya first puts on that mask, the kindly man cuts her forehead. So the blade sort of just comes out of nowhere, and then the blood starts to fill in the actual like faceless mask, right? But right before that, Arya actually drinks something that tastes really bitter. So there's potions that are involved with changing a face. Maybe eventually a faceless man gets to the point where they don't need the potion, but some sort of potion that Arya drinks sort of also allows her to assume this identity. Which, even though it's a faceless identity, and like the whole reason why she's putting it on is because the kindly man tells her that glamours and stuff won't necessarily work in this case, because a learned individual can see through a glamour. Like, you kind of actually have to assume a face on this one. The whole reason why she does it is not the whole reason why she does it, but I was just gonna make a side note that, like, even though she does all this and puts on a faceless man, there's a dog, right? So Arya used to be a pickpocket, and there was this dude who, not a dog, a seal, right? He would train seals to clap and juggle and stuff, and while he was drawing in a crowd doing that, he would have someone go around and slit all the pockets of the people that were watching. Arya used to be that pickpocket. So when she's wearing the face of the broken girl, she makes her way to her assignment, and she stops at the place where she used to be a pickpocket and working for the dude with the seal. I forget his name. But the dude doesn't recognize her, but the seal does. The seal looks at her and goes, "Arr, arr, arr," and like he recognizes that it's Arya through that glamour. So that's pretty cool. It's another sign that animals are far more intelligent than humans in this story. But anyway, so Arya drinks the potion, puts on the face, and immediately she starts to have PTSD from the actual person whose face she's wearing. So she really is wearing the skin of a dead person. So the faceless men have the warging ability, but only to dead people. So they can consume, they don't just look like the dead person, they are the dead person. And I think that potion that Arya takes helps her block out the personality or all of the pain and stuff that starts to overwhelm her when she puts on the face. So as soon as she has the mask on and starts feeling her face, she immediately feels blinding pain because the mask has broken her jaw and broken her nose, right? It's only temporary, but she ultimately feels everything that girl felt while she was still alive. So she has this overwhelming sense of dread. This old man pops in front of her face, and it's actually the dead girl's father, and she's like, get away, right? But then the kindly man brings her out of it. He's like, calm down. All these feelings that you're feeling are fake. It's broke. This ugly little girl is dead. Push her at bay. Like, you're just wearing her skin, so to speak. And it reminded me of when Breanne is, the analogy is perfect, right? So the reason why dogs and wolves are so easily worked is because they're man's best friend, right? You do it once, the wolf will let you in almost every time because they're sort of broken in at that point. The same thing with Hodor. The first couple of times Breanne works in Hodor, he fights him like crazy, but then eventually Breanne does it so often and so frequently that he's able to enter Hodor's mind, and Hodor, he travels with the Reeds down to this place to go fishing, and he using Hodor's body, and when he does it, he mentions that Hodor basically just sort of crouches down in the corner and like stops fighting him, right? So he submits. So Hodor is broken in. It's the same thing that's going to happen with the dragon, right? Eventually Breanne will break a dragon's psyche, and this is how he'll be able to mount it. Or maybe he'll warg into a Targaryen and break their psyche, but then the dragon would sense that. I don't know where I'm going with that. But anyway, so the ability to wear a face is not quite surface level like it is on the TV show. It's not just like change your face, right? It's like, no, you are taking on the soul of a dead person, and if you're not careful, they'll consume you. Meaning, like, Arya starts sort of choking herself. She gets this feeling of choking and intense feeling of dread, but then she puts up her arms to fight whoever's trying to choke her, and she realizes no one's there. So I took that as, oh, she was choking herself. She was like, the other person's sort of spirit was like consuming her, and she didn't kind of, didn't have control over the situation, right? So let's get further back on track. The Northmen, some terrible things they do, or terrible things they're forced to do, are cannibalism. Almost every generation of either Stark or whoever from the North has to experience some form of it. That's why they have these. Okay, so let me rephrase that. They don't have to experience it, but it's probably fairly common in the North, right? The reason why I say this is because a large chunk of the Northmen that Stannis is camping with, like 20 leagues from Winterfell, start consuming human flesh. And like, yeah, it's frowned upon, and Stannis burns the dudes for doing that, but the fact that they were the first ones to think of it makes me think, oh, yeah, these Northmen are cannibalistic. Like, these winters are hard, and they don't necessarily have food. So, George hasn't said this, but I feel like we always hear Northmen go out into the woods and they go die willingly because there's no food to eat, right? What if they go out into the woods to go die to freeze, and then their family comes and finds them, and the older family member butchers them up, doesn't tell the younger family members, and feeds them crackling pork, right? So, like, another example. Cold Hands somehow finds a pig north of the wall, right? Him and Breanne and Muir Reed and Jojen and Hodor and Summer are in the middle of nowhere. There's no game to eat. Breanne is warging into his direwolf a tremendous amount of times, and he can't find no game. Summer grows gaunt and lean, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Cold Hands shows up with some meat and says it's pig. And Breanne is like, oh, that's kind of weird because there's a bunch of dead deserters of the Night Watch not too far from here. It's human meat, right? It's the other white meat, human meat. So Breanne is consuming flesh then, right? They all consume the flesh of the pork. And then also, potentially, Breanne does it again when he gets to Bloodraven's cave because he drinks this bowl of weirwood paste that has these veins going through it that Breanne swears are blood red in the light. And it's really nasty at first, and then Breanne is like, "Oh wow, this tastes like home," right? So he potentially is consuming. Everybody says it's Jojen paste, but Jojen's not dead yet. He's still alive. Jojen becomes extremely sad and starts to sort of like lose it towards the end of Breanne's dance chapters. But there's no actual proof that Jojen is dead yet. So it could be like Bloodraven paste. Could potentially be. It could even potentially be a child of the forest who was a green seer, right? So, one of the times when Breanne's in the cave, he jumps in the mind of a crow, crow, and he senses the presence of another person there, and he's like, "What the fuck? What is this?" And then he's told by Bloodraven, "Yo, that's another singer. That's a dead singer. When the singers die, when the children of the forest die, they go into the trees." Sometimes they warg into the mind of the birds and they live a second life, right? So that's pretty cool. But what I'm getting at here is cannibalism is so rife throughout this story that Cregan Stark and the Northmen probably have experienced some form of it, even in his generation. One of the things that makes him so late to the Dance of the Dragons is the fact that he's gathering crops. He knows that there's a bloody civil war going on down south, and they need his help as soon as possible, but he's still like, "Yo, if I don't get these crops, we're going to be eating people this winter," is my opinion. I feel like that, along with the fact that you hear rumors of them doing like other Northmen, not necessarily members of House Stark, doing crazy things like wearing the cloaks, the skin of other people as cloaks, right? That's not a far stretch if you're consuming human flesh. So if winter has forced you to eat the people that are around you, why would you not do sick, crazy things like turn their flesh into cloaks, right? There was a famous Stark who was killed by a famous Bolton who had his skin turned into a cloak. Ed Gein, a real-life serial killer, turned human flesh into lampshades in, like, pieces of leather and stuff. So, he's a psychopath. I'm pretty sure he consumed human flesh as well. What I'm getting at is there's probably members of the North who have taken cannibalism one step further, right? So House Bolton in particular, skins people. Ramsay mentions to Roose that he would skin his wife and turn her into a pair of boots. Lady Hornwood, right? It's funny. He forcibly marries this lady, and she, obviously doesn't want nothing to do with him, so he locks her in a cell and doesn't give her any food, and she supposedly chews her fingers off. She, eats her fingers off. Another form of cannibalism. That's self-cannibalism. And then he mentions, yo, if that bitch doesn't shut up, I'll skin her and turn her into a pair of boots. Roose then goes, that would make for the worst pair of boots ever. How the f would Roose know that if he's not actively, maybe when he was younger, turning people into boots? But you gotta realize the Dreadfort is in the north. All of these Northmen do wild, wild things, right? So let me look at my notes here for a second. Okay, so I have one question that was submitted this week. Let me refresh my Patreon page to double check. And it was submitted by my boy, Billy Bob Robertson. He's in the chat right now. What up, my dude? All the way from Scotland, yeah. Potentially you're watching me on a TV. Or I think you said you were going to be going on the pissy train or something. I don't know what that is, but if there's that much pee on the train that is called the pissy train, why don't you guys stop peeing on the train? Just kidding. Thank you for your support, my man. He says, sup, Sir Hunts. How's your week going? Pretty good, pretty good. If it's bad, don't worry. It's 420 someplace. Ha ha ha. Speaking of which, anyway, question. Since you're doing Cregan, I thought I'd ask who your favorite Stark, not seen in either show. Peace out, my dude. Hashtag Scottish. not English. I'm actually in the process of watching a documentary on YouTube about excuse me, why the King of England is called the King of Scots or something like that. I don't know. I literally just started. 2 minutes is how much I've seen of it. But anyway, he says, who is my favorite Stark not seen in House of the Dragon or in Game of Thrones? So technically, Billy, I could say Cregan because we ain't seen him yet in House of the Dragon. But not seen in either show, Jon Stark. Now you're probably like, what? That's Jon Snow? No, Jon Stark is this dude that we hear about in World of Ice and Fire. And potentially he's mentioned in the main series. But basically, he's a king of the North before Aegon's conquest. We don't have specific dates on his reign. But basically, the thing that he did was build the Wolf's Den. The Wolf's Den is this dope-ass location that Davos goes to and is imprisoned at in the books. He just got released. He got released on good behavior. No, but the Wolf's Den was basically this castle that he built at the Neck, which is this river that like leads into the north. And this dude Jon Stark built the castle, the Wolf's Den, there to protect the north. And then I think his son ends up annexing the Neck, becomes a part of the north. So the Wolf's Den is a castle there for a while. I think there's some history to it. Like there's these group of people who are doing a terrible, like before it's called the Wolf's Den, Jon Stark leads a mission to go and save a bunch of people because there are some wildlings there who are potentially doing crazy rituals and stuff. So Jon Stark puts in a nix on all that. He saves the day, so to speak. Builds the castle. It's called Wolf's Den. Then the Wolf's Den is given to the Manderleys. When the Manderleys are kicked out of the Riverlands for being too rich, the Reach. They're kicked out of the Reach by, is it the Garlands? The Garlands aren't really around. House Tyrell are the banner lords of the Reach in the main story. But, yeah. It's just cool. I think he's got, we haven't seen him in the books or show, so, I think Jon Stark is my favorite. The Wolf's Den is dope because the way that it's described, sort of makes it stand out from the rest of, the architecture surrounding, like, the buildings that House Manderley occupies in White Harbor. So the Manderleys are from the Reach, so they don't worship the North. They worship, if I'm not mistaken, the Merlin King. The Merlin King is this figure who they may have made a deal with House Velaryon, and that's how House Velaryon got the Driftwood throne. So that's cool. But the Merlin King is worshipped by the Manderley. The Manderleys are Northmen. The modern Manderleys probably worship the old gods. But initially, the Starks allowed them to... the Starks didn't just give them the Wolf's Den. They actually bought it. That's one of the things that's mentioned in the books, is the Manderley paid for being allowed into the North by silver. So the Starks took a bunch of their wealth, too. But anyway, it's just cool. I like that whole history with the Wolf's Den. Jon Stark's my favorite. Thank you for submitting that question, my boy, Billy Bob Robertson. Anybody watching this right now, if you haven't joined my Patreon, you can join for as little as $2. And you immediately unlock a vast library of content. Mostly talking about Fire and Blood. There's like 20 episodes dedicated to House of the Dragon. Most of the content there is for the A Song of Ice and Fire book series. But to be fair, we got 5 books in the main series and literally just Fire and Blood for House of the Dragon. So it's kind of hard to without discussing every single thing in that book like 35 times. You know what I mean? It's part of the reason why I try to always include more Song of Ice and Fire stuff in these breakdowns, because if I just did a Cregan, what we know about him and what he does, that would be 20 minutes, and that's it. Real quick, let me say what's up to everybody in the chat. Participants. Let's see. Shout out Dennis Sorensen, Divine Sharika, Mitchell McCormick, and I know my boy Billy Bob is in here. Brandon Cameron, Claudia Harras, Saud MTE, Manhattan Mike, you were like one of the first ones. What's up, buddy? I think that's it. Oh, Jonathan Wood. Anybody else who's watching right now that isn't talking, thank you. Or talking, I meant to say, typing in the chat. So let's get back on track here, all right? So we got to realize the Northmen are kind of not like your average Westerosi, right? Their environment, the fact that they have maybe witnessed cannibalism, somebody in their family has done it, somebody that they know has done, like, they're affiliated with that. And because they know how harsh the world can actually be, if you think Cregan's going to be like Jon Snow or Ned Stark, you're wrong. You're wrong. The later generations of House Stark aren't as hard as the earlier ones. The other Northmen in the main A Song of Ice and Fire series are so much harder than the Starks. But I feel like Cregan is, it's a TV show, so they're probably going to make him extremely likable. But if they didn't, and they wanted to do a book-accurate version, he would be hated. Like, seriously. Like, when he comes down south, he's like, immediately, people are not going to like him because he tries to kill Corlys. He's like, no, yeah, you're called the Sea Snake because you fucking turn this way and bite that way, right? Like, he only has half of the picture because he was, up north gathering crops. He doesn't exactly know what the hell's going on. So when he does show up, he's got all these people with him that are literally there just to die. They're there to leave the north because winter is coming, and everybody's going to start eating them unless they leave. I'm just kidding. They're not going to get eaten. But potentially that does happen. I feel like those Northmen that go off into the woods to go die are leaving a trail for the oldest member of their household to come and find them and carve them up into nice cutlets of pork. And they're eating pork cutlets. But it's their ancestor, or, their grandpappy, or their faja, right? Potentially. This dude Cregan is extremely misogynistic. He, not only does he want to put Corlys to death, he also is kind of like the end of fun, right? So when he shows up on the show, it's going to be the final season. It's going to potentially be the last couple of episodes. That ultimately he is meant to be like, it's clear. It's very clear, in my opinion, why George included this character in the Dance of the Dragons. Is that it's to mirror his original story, right? So Ned Stark comes down south to become the Hand of the King to Robert, right? After Robert dies, Ned tries to wrap up his whole Hand of the Kingship by righting all of the wrongs. So he meets with Cersei in the Godswood, and he's like, look, bitch, get your children and get the fuck out of King's Landing. I'm going to tell everybody that they're bastards. You need to run. Run. And she's like, that's not going to go down like the way you think it is, Ned, right? So, Ned ends up dying because of this. But Cregan does the same thing and doesn't die, right? So Cregan comes down south. He isn't Hand of the King, but Aegon III makes him the Hand of the King so he can start executing people. He kills Larys Clubfoot. Tries to kill Corlys. He ultimately marries Allie Blackwood, but Not after telling her that her maidenhead was wasted on a horse. This dude is like I said, a misogynistic butthole. Like, he literally says to her, well, some people would say that was a gift you squandered on a beast. And that was supposed to be a gift to your husband. Because, like, so it's mentioned that, like, all of the men that are around at the end of the story sort of want to still go to war. It's the women, like Black Alley, the Dragon Twins, Lady of the Veil, that sort of put a nix to that. So Black Alley ends up settling down with Cregan. It's funny because she tells him, or he tells her, like, she says, anything you want, I'll give it to you if you allow Cregan to live or whatever. And he's like, and what if I wanted your maidenhead? And then she goes, well, I can't give you something that ain't there, right? And that's when he says the line, like, after she says, I lost on a horse or whatever, he's like, well, some would say that you wasted the gift that you were supposed to give to your husband. Like, those things make you sort of be like, all right, well, this dude Cregan is not necessarily like Ned Stark, but they're probably not going to do that version. They're probably going to make him extremely likable for the TV show, at least at first in season 2 when we first meet him, and Winterfell when Jace first meets him. For sure he's gonna be a likable dude. He's called the Old Man of the North because he sort of has to grow up fast, right? So it's actually a really common theme in the North because a similar situation happens with the Umbers, right? So the Umber uncle tries to steal House Umber lordship from his niece during the main storyline, and Jon puts a nix to that. He sticks the Umber dude inside of an ice cell. At least I think it's House Umber. But anyway, when Cregan is first coming up, his father dies, and he's made the Lord of Winterfell, but he's really young. He's like 9 or 10. So his uncle, Bernard, or Beanard, it's a weird way of spelling Bernard, sort of, has a regency for him. He controls the North until Cregan becomes of age. And when Cregan becomes of age, his uncle doesn't want to relinquish the power. So Cregan has to sort of wage a war against his uncle to assume the role of the Lord of Winterfell. That, is the beginning of his story. So it kind of makes sense why he's so hard and why he's so determined to make sure he can be the best ruler for the North he can by, holding up the Queen's forces, the Black's forces, that, he was supposed to amass an army and come help Rhaenyra. And he doesn't show up until after she's already dead, and after Aegon's already dead, after the war's over. So, the whole reason why he stays up north is to try to make sure that the North is set for the coming winter, which literally that winter probably only happens because all the dragons die. So when there's a balance of magic, when you have a proper number of dragons, it keeps the ice magic in check, right? So dragons kind of know instinctually to not go north of the wall, and the White Walkers can't go south of the wall. But if there's no dragons south of the wall, the White Walkers are going to move. There's no power to sort of check and put them in balance. Until now, dragons are back in the world. Like Daenerys is bringing them back, and she's over in Essos. Eventually, she's going to get over to Westeros and fight these White Walkers, right? If she doesn't go, someone's going to take one of her dragons to help fight the White Walkers. So, I feel like if the Dance of the Dragons hadn't happened, that 2-year harsh winter that happens immediately after the dance wouldn't have been so bad if the dragons were kind of still around. I wonder how winter would affect Winterfell if there was a dragon that just resided in Winterfell. Supposedly Virmax leaves a clutch of eggs underneath Winterfell, inside the hot springs, and potentially that egg would be completely fossilized in the main storyline. We know that, like Daenerys' dragon eggs. They turn to stone as soon as they leave the dragon mount. They need a massive source of volcanic energy to keep them, sort of incubated, or a Targaryen next to them. Targaryens would put the eggs in their cribs as babies. So I'm just curious if Jon did keep a dragon at Winterfell, how bad the winters would get. I don't think they'd get that bad because, Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. The winter that affects Winterfell is... It comes from the lands of always winter, though. Like, it blows over the wall and comes down to Winterfell. So, yeah, it really is, like, the White Walkers are building up power. Divine Sharika says, Cregan should be hot-headed like in the books. I mean, that the Hound was a hard man, even on television, but still everyone loved him. Yes, not at first, though. At least I didn't. Sandor at first was, like... I liked him in the sense that I knew he was badass and, like, the lines that he had were funny and he wasn't afraid to call people out, right? But, you know, like, the average show watcher wouldn't put Sandor as, like, hey, he's my number one. That didn't happen until later. Season 4 with Arya, when they're traveling around the Riverlands, the show sort of made that what it was. Because, like, we kind of get that in the books, but not really. Like... Arya doesn't... Well, that's because Winds of Winter isn't out yet. I was about to say, Arya doesn't come back to... Like, she does realize she loves the Hound, right? The kindly man kind of makes her realize that. But that's not... Like, she doesn't have that full completed arc where she runs into him again. And he's, like, proud to see her and stuff. Sometimes I confuse what happens on the TV show with what I think and what's supposed to happen in Winds of Winter. So, sorry about that. Sorry, I was responding to that. The Hound was... Yes! I don't think people started liking him, though, until, season 4, when he starts to sort of have a redemption arc, and you realize, oh, he's kind of was just doing his job in the first season, and, like, he was a bit of a douche because of that. Anthony Manzano, #mob, says, what new characters are they introducing in season 2 of House of the Dragon? New characters. So, for sure, 3 that we know for sure. To be fair, do you mean major or minor characters? So, I'll start with major. 3 major characters. We know Jace is going to Winterfell, so Cregan, right? We know that Benjamin Blackwood, his father, Samwell Blackwood, was set up in season 1, so I would imagine Bloody Ben would be another character. So, Cregan, Bloody Ben, and then... for sure, they confirmed this, Daeron. Daeron the Daring, Alicent, and Viserys' youngest child, who's about the same age as Jacaerys. So he'll be like a 13, 14-year-old. He'll probably sort of be similar to, or similar age-wise to Lucerys on the show, the actor who played him. I think he's like 17 or something, so they're probably going to have an actor around that age play Daeron. So Daeron, Cregan, and Benjamin Blackwood, Bloody Ben. More for sure, but just 3 major ones. Some minor ones. Oh, let me do another one. Alice Rivers. We know Alice Rivers is going to be in the show because we had that audition tape with Emily Beecham where she's like dressing up Daemon's wounds, right? For after he takes Harrenhal. Now, in canon, Daemon doesn't get any wounds when he takes Harrenhal. It makes sense because Daemon is such a brilliant battle commander, right? He's also a 55-year-old dude. He's like 50 years old in the book. So in Westeros age and in medieval times, that's old as shit. He's seen a lot. On the TV show, he's like, actually, to be fair, Matt Smith is like 42 or something. Matt Smith is older, so he's kind of actually not that far. It's just that he looks a lot younger than he actually is. So that's like... The casting department did a good job. They cast someone that was pretty close to the age of Daemon. It's just Matt Smith just looks younger. But anyway, it's so crazy to be talking about the dude, and he's like right behind me. That's nuts. Yeah. It's my boy Jay Fox. Go follow him on Instagram. That's one of the things you have to do to win the art that I mentioned at the beginning of this. You have to follow Jay Fox on Instagram. His thing is private. His profile is private, but you have to follow him. I normally say you have to be subscribed here, you have to follow me and such, but no, in order to win the digital print, you have to go follow him on Instagram. And that's J_Fox art, I think. Let me double check right here. So J_Fox_art. And let me just show you some. Well, y'all can't even see that, but look at how amazing some of these prints are. He does all of these himself. Look at these. There's like Bob Marley. There's like Zendaya. My phone won't let me scroll. Look, there's Scarface. The dude is amazingly talented. So you get to win. You win one of these, a digital one, a digital copy of it, Song of Ice and Fire themed. But you got to wait till the end of the stream, and you got to be following jfox_art on Instagram. Obviously, whoever the winner is that I pick, I'll have to go double check and confirm they're following J Fox. That's the only thing you got to do, though. You don't got to be subscribed to me. You don't got to go follow me. You got to go follow him. All right, so yeah. What was that last one that I was responding to? Anthony Mazzano said, what new characters? Okay, so we did the major ones, right? So that's Dayron, Cregan, Benjicott, Blackwood, Alice Rivers, right? So let's do 4 minor ones. Blood and Cheese, that's 2 right there. Blood is a rat catcher. Blood is a former Gold Cloak member. Cheese is a rat catcher, and they're hired via Mysaria to sneak into the Red Keep to go and initially, in the books, they're supposed to go and kill the king's heir. So they're going there to go kill Jaehaerys. But when they get there, they make Helena decide, who do you want us to kill? And she chooses Maelor, thinking that Maelor is too young to know what the fuck is going on. But then they kill Jaehaerys, because that's who they were sent to kill. And Maelor watches. And they're like, yo, you hear that, boy? Your mama wants you dead. Your mama chose to kill you over this guy, but we're going to kill him and you're going to be alive. So your mama doesn't really want you. It's fucked. It's so messed up. But also Maelor gets ripped apart. So we don't really see the psychological impact of that. He gets ripped to pieces. Why am I laughing at that? It's not really that funny. Check out my custom t-shirt. These are available over on Teespring if you want to go buy one. Minor characters, like I said, Blood and Cheese. Potentially. I hope we get some. It would be cool to have some characters that are just for, just for the TV show, not necessarily had a role in the books or in the book Fire and Blood, or I can't really think of any minor character, but I think of more. You have Elmo, Tully, and Kermit, right? The lads, Grover, Tully, right? Dudes that are named after Sesame Street puppets, right? They're gonna be, they're kind of major characters in Fire and Blood in the sense that no one's really not a major character if they're mentioned, because it's a history book. So if a character is mentioned by name, usually the fate of them, unless it's unknown, is mentioned in the story. So I guess you can consider for sure the lads major characters, but ultimately it's like, what do? They fight in the Riverlands. Well, actually, no, they are. They are there for sure. It's funny because when Cregan comes in during the Hour of the Wolf, they're sort of quailed, because before that they're like, we did this. We're like, yeah, they're like boisterous and stuff. And when Cregan shows up, he's like a grown ass man, so he sort of puts them in check. Which also, if they write it a certain way, could make him look even more dickish. Because everybody for sure is going to like the lads. The lads are meant to be, we're meant to be fans of the lads. So when this dude Cregan shows up and he's being mean to everybody's favorites, that's another reason why potentially, nobody would fuck with him. And then there was another one right below that. Wex is a secret Targaryen. Wex says, love your username, by the way. They said when the Hound wanted all the chicken in that inn is when we started liking him. Yes. But I think before that, because, even though he snatches Arya, when she runs away from the Brotherhood Without Banners, as soon as they go to, her aunt and not to Cersei, that's when we realize he's a good dude. He's not taking her back to the Lannisters. Also, to be fair, he can't go back to the Lannisters because he deserted them. Literally, he leaves in the middle of the battle because it gets too hot. The fire engulfs and surrounds the area around him, and he's like, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck the king. I was wearing my shirt earlier, but I changed it because I didn't want y'all to think I haven't showered in 3 days. Even though I haven't. I was just like, let me put on a clean shirt so they think I took a shower last night. That's why my hair's dry. But yeah. Yeah, Sandor's the man. Sandor Clegane. That's like my favorite A Song of Ice and Fire t-shirt. I have like 30 of them. Even this one that I designed myself. I prefer this. Oh, shit. Super chat. Thank you. Super chat from Brianna Reno. Or Bree Marie. Sorry. This is a member of my Patreon. Thank you for that super chat. She says, what is going to be your favorite part/scene in season 2? Something specifically that has to happen in season 2. Or I don't want it to happen in season 2, but it's probably going to, because that's how it happens in canon. The duel between the Cargill twins. And I'm not just saying that because Elliot and Luke follow me on Instagram. I promise I'm not just saying that. No, but it's like, actually they are part of the reason why I'm excited for it. They practice MMA. These dudes probably are going to do their own stunts. So when we have, literally it's the greens versus the blacks in a symbolic form that couldn't really get any more poetic than it is, right? So basically, Eric is hired by Aegon II and Sir Otto to sneak into Dragonstone and go and kill Rhaenyra's heir, or Rhaenyra herself, rather. And this is sort of payback for Blood and Cheese. What ends up happening is, as everyone would think, Eric is able to get into all the way into fucking Dragonstone. He's like not 3 steps, but very close to Rhaenyra's chambers. And then guess what? Rhaenyra's sworn shield shows up. I've seen people, whenever I say sworn shield, people will be like, it's actually sworn sword or whatever. Sworn shield, sworn sword. It's the same fucking thing. It's the same thing. You're defending and attacking because you've sworn oath to someone else. But anyway, Rhaenyra's shield, Eric, shows up and he's like, hold up. Bro, what are you doing? You can't be here. Actually, he doesn't say, what are you doing? Because he knows why he's there. That's what's mentioned in canon. He knows why his brother is there. It's to kill Rhaenyra. So obviously he can't have that. I actually wrote a song. I wrote a rap. It took me like 20 minutes. But I pretended to be both of their Cargill twins arguing for one another. Or arguing about what they're doing, like who's right, who's wrong. I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. Let me know what y'all think. Can you hear it? You should be able to hear it. Yeah. So yeah, this is my favorite part to answer your question, Brie Marie. The Cargill twins, which, like I said, I don't want it to happen in season 2. I'm not gonna make y'all listen to this whole thing. True air. He's the fucking spare. Yeah, that's right. Go listen to that on Instagram if you want to. I linked a chat at the top. A link, rather, to go follow me on Instagram. So my favorite part of season 2 is going to be the Cargill twins duel. So basically, they fight each other to the death. According to Mushroom, it was over in minutes, and Eric cursed Eric to the traitor that he was, and then he died immediately, but then Eric died a few days later of a gut wound, like in excruciating amounts of pain. That's probably the real version of what happened. The TV show is going to do their version of it. The reason why I say this is because that makes the most sense. Like, if you got stabbed in the gut by your brother, like, you would cry out hating them, but even though you don't feel that way, but like that would be like your last emotion. That just sounds like the most realistic situation. And then you have this, the poets, right? They said stuff like, oh, the duel lasted all day, and they were matching blow for blow until eventually one of them tired and killed the other one, and then the other one died as well. Like, they died in each other's arms, so to speak, right? But I think Mushroom's version, mixed with a little bit of the singer's version, is kind of what we'll get on the TV show and what the TV show's version will be. So they're going to fight. I hope the swords are removed at some point. Like, maybe they like nick their blades and disarm each other, and on their handle, the handle of their swords, they have brass knuckles. So clearly they are brawling in King's Landing in the streets. You got to remember, Eric was hanging out in a fucking gutter snake rat pit, watching over Aegon, yes, but also probably occasionally having to handle some people. So their duel will start off with swords at first, and eventually probably switch to like jujitsu, right? They're probably going to tumble around. Like, okay, so to be fair, jujitsu doesn't exist in the Seven Kingdoms. But George, for sure, describes modern fighting styles. Like, obviously, people are wearing suits of armor and stuff, so it's like medieval fighting. But the dirty fighting, the knocking, you knee somebody in the balls and you hit him right in the knockout spot. Like, that kind of shit is described in A Song of Ice and Fire. So it wouldn't be too far-fetched to have these dudes pulling, like, arm bars and maybe some Gamoras going into, like, okay, that would be too much, right? But some moves that if you're watching and if you're a fan of MMA, it'll happen quickly on screen. It'll be dope to see, right? Like, wouldn't y'all love to see an omoplata? I know I would. I'm a big UFC MMA fan. It'd be dope as shit to see some potential limb broken in this fight. I don't know. That's my fate. That's what I'm looking forward to the most. And like I said, I kind of hope it doesn't happen in season 2 and it happens in season 3 so we can get a whole season to build up with the Cargill twins. Because to be honest, they show up in the last 2 episodes and we don't know them very well. So when that duel happens, it won't feel as impactful unless it happens at the end of season 2 and we get to spend a bunch of time with them. That's the other way to do it. But also, you know, I would want to see them on the show as long as possible because they're cool as shit. And they smoke weed. Thank you for that, Breanne. Where was that? Wex's secret target when the Hound wanted all the chickens in the end. That's when we started liking him. Gaming Trucker 101 says, Cregan Stark is a badass. He lays the law down. Indeed, he does. Jake W says, just curious, how many times have you read the books and watched the show? All right, so I've watched the show all the way through House of the Dragon. I've seen House of the Dragon all the way through 4 times. I'm on my 4th rewatch right now, but I haven't finished episode 7. Like, I haven't gone back to watch it in like 3 or 4 weeks, but I'm on my 4th rewatch for House of the Dragon. Game of Thrones, I don't even know. I watched Game of Thrones probably at least 3 times all the way through before I even started my YouTube channel. And then just imagine, 1,000 videos later, I've probably watched so every time I would break down an episode, I watched the episode twice and then talked about it for 3 hours after each one on air and then watched it again before making my video after that. So, season 6, 7, and 8, I've probably seen those like 7 times just because that's when I started my YouTube channel. But as a whole, the series, I haven't watched the series as a whole, aside from up till season 6 since the show ended. I watched this till season 6 all the time because I love watching Jon Snow die and come back. Like, it's amazing, right? And then also Daenerys with the slavers over in Marine, right? That's literally where the books are right now. So I just kind of stopped there. And I know it seems like they're saying like the last few seasons are bad. Not necessarily the case. There were some very questionable moments in season 8, and I think lots of people thought it was terrible as a whole, right? If you want my opinion on it, just go watch my videos. Like I said, when I went live after every episode, I think I was fairly honest and open back then about how I thought. Obviously, whatever I say now is going to be not 100% accurate because I've seen it. I've had time to sort of get over it, right? So, honestly, I don't think it was that bad. I think the internet over fucking reacted. But that's now. That's a 4 years later opinion. That's not how I felt back then, so it's not, it's not accurate. How many times have I seen the show though? Probably, we'll say 5 or 6 times all the way through, for sure. Then the later seasons even more. The books, I've read the books 7 times. I've read Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings, Storm of Swords, A Feast for Crows, and A Dance of Dragons 7 times. I literally have like maybe a few hours left on Audible, so that's like 3 or 4 POVs left in Dance of Dragons to be literally, I've read it 7 times. Fire and Blood, World of Ice and Fire, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, those 3 novella, The Rogue Prince, or Rogues rather, and then The Princess and the Queen. The side stories and stuff, I haven't read those 7 times. I've read World of Ice and Fire like 4 times. I've read Fire and Blood at least 3 times. But the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, I've actually only read through twice. I've listened to the audiobook when I first started on YouTube. That was one of the only audiobooks that I used to listen to, and it's because when I first started on YouTube and I tried to listen to the audiobooks, Roy annoyed the shit out of me. I was like, yo, is this Smeagol? Dude, what is this? It was like too hard for me to take serious. So I, kind of didn't mess with him. But yeah, I don't know. Thank you for submitting that. Jake W. And Anthony Manzano says specifically major. Oh, for major characters. Okay, so I did that. Divine Sharika says, which 3 new characters are you most hyped for? Personally, Cregan, Dayron, and Nettles. Oh, so I kind of answered that with the who do I think is going to show up. About most excited for, probably the same ones as you, minus, I'm excited for Nettles, but not necessarily as excited as I am for, like, Hugh Hammer. Main reason being is because I'm a big fan of baddies. Hugh Hammer, like, this dude is just a blacksmith, right? Kind of minding his own business, right? And then he gets asked to go mount a dragon. Then after he mounts a dragon, he sort of still continues to be a blacksmith in who he was. Goes and joins the Greens. Ultimately, doesn't really work out for him in the long run. But yeah, Hugh Hammer. Feel like he would be the most badass, imposing Targaryen, right? That we may potentially see aside from Maegor. People think Aegon the Conqueror was this massive, imposing figure, but they're fucking wrong. In actuality, Aegon the Conqueror was more like Daniel Radcliffe or Will the guy that I can't remember his name again. Will something. Will Poulter, right? That's who Aegon the Conqueror was. He comes from a long line of incestuous people. This is during a time period where they didn't necessarily know about nutrition. He rode Balerion the Black Dread. That's all the muscle he needed, right? He was a fucking wise, thinking, well-learned. He was well-traveled. He participated in battles in Pentos. That was mentioned on House of the Dragon. The dude was more of a bookworm nerd than he was a warrior savage. Like, I don't know why people have this idea that Aegon is this massive fucking Henry Cavill type of dude. Well, first of all, nobody was Henry Cavill size back then because you couldn't fucking eat that good. And if you could eat that good, you were fat. You weren't a muscle-bound, fat musclehead, right? That doesn't make sense. Now, to be fair, there were large people. Like, a lot of people say Vikings were massive, big people, right? You look at Hafthor Bjornsson, comes from that area where the Vikings came from. Mind you, I've got some of that blood in me myself. But then you look up how large historic Vikings were, and then you're like, oh, fuck, they're shorties. I'm a fucking Viking in my body size and height now. Vikings were an average height of like 5'8" and maybe 160 pounds. The difference is that they come from such a crazy environment that when they would go out and go on these raids and go all over the world, it was nothing compared to how their homeland is and how harsh it was. So that's why the Vikings were able to do all that. And then, obviously you have movies like The Northmen that make them sort of immortal in physique and appearance and stuff, and that's just not the case. Vikings were bearded, they were like the Northmen in Song of Ice and Fire. Dudes that were from a really tough area because of that environment. They had strange customs. They potentially were cannibalistic, and when you have to do things like that, other things, when put into perspective, aren't that far off. So if you're eating human flesh, making a cloak from their skins and thinking of them as animals isn't that far off. That's all I'm saying. Anthony Mazzano said, at what point in the book series and in the show are we going to see Daemon and the oldest of Alicent's children finally have their major confrontation? Daemon and Aegon and Helena never have a standoff, but Daemon and Aemond obviously have a huge standoff. Battle Above the God's Eye is probably going to happen in Season 4. It's probably going to happen it'll either be the closing for Season 3 or the mid-season finale for Season 4. I feel like that the Battle Above the God's Eye needs to be one of the last things that happens, because literally after that, not that much interest. Aegon dies, is poisoned, the Hour of the Wolf happens. The story's kind of over, so save that for the final season. Season 2 is probably going to end at Rook's Rest, potentially. Season 3 could either open with the Battle of the Gullet or halfway through the Battle of the Gullet. I wanted to see Rhaenyra taking King's Landing by the end of Season 2. It'd be dope if she literally puts on the black plate, hops on her dragon Syrax, and crosses the Narrow Sea, and then we see her flying into King's Landing as the last shot of Season 2. So remember how the season opened with her flying over King's Landing? Younger version, on Syrax, not in black plate. Juxtapose that with season 2 closing image of her flying into King's Landing. Daemon's beside her. Dragons wheeling across the sky. Like, that would be amazing to watch. Gaming Trucker says, I'm most excited to see RE. Is that for Rhaenyra? Brandon Cameron, imagine killing your twin because of other people's family disputes. Mushroom the Puppet Master. Yes, that, referring to the Cargill twins, that's terrible. It's like they made their choice, and by making their choice, they decided, next time I run into you, I'm going to kill you, right? But that context isn't given to us. I mean, it is as a book reader, because we know, like, these dudes killed each other. One fought for the Greens, one fought for the Blacks, right? But for the TV show, they added in the Eric sort of follows Eric around for a day and finds out what Aegon's doing, and then he decides, I'm going to the Blacks. Rhaenyra, And here's the thing, though. That decision was already kind of made beforehand, because as soon as Harwin is Rhaenyra's sworn protector, right? So as soon as Harwin is like made common knowledge that potentially Rhaenyra's children are fathered by Harwin gets sent to Harrenhal, right? And when he gets sent to Harrenhal, Eric becomes Rhaenyra's shield. So in episode 8, we see Eric in the background when Alicent and Rhaenyra are talking at the, like, before the dinner scene. So, like, that's how they're sort of set up in the books. Like, Eric is Rhaenyra's sworn shield, and Eric is obviously Aegon's sworn shield on the TV show, and then he gets sent. And it's the perfect metaphor. They're sort of innocent in the sense they're just doing their job, and they have to do, in order to do their job, it's going to end with the death of their brother, right? It's a terrible, terrible thing to happen. Otto Hightower says, Sir Hunts, where do you think season 2 will finish? People keep saying the fall in King's Landing, but I think that's way too quick. So I kind of just answered that. I'm going to scroll down and go to the most recent questions too after this one. Yeah, it would be, but also you can kind of change the timeline around a little bit. Like, the Battle of the Gullet has to happen before Rhaenyra takes King's Landing. In canon, if you're doing it canon that way, right? So the gullet being annexed and opened up, closed off by the sea snake, allows Rhaenyra to take King's Landing. The Battle of the Gullet happens, and this is where Jacaerys dies. Jacaerys dying needs to happen before Rhaenyra takes King's Landing in canon, but not necessarily in the TV show. I think, actually, that you could totally have Rhaenyra take King's Landing because she's on a dragon, right? The whole reason why she's able to do it is because Aegon is wiped out at Rook's Rest. She doesn't know it, but he goes over to Dragonstone, is living there, healing, right? Aemond gets mad and leaves the city and marches with Criston Cole to Harrenhal to go and take back Harrenhal because he thinks that's their biggest weak point, is the fact that Daemon has captured Harrenhal. So they literally leave King's Landing open for the taking. The Battle of the Gullet, yes, does happen before them, but like I'm saying, Rhaenyra could easily fly over to King's Landing, and then the Battle of the Gullet will open up the next season, so it'll be season 3, and then you have the death of Jacaerys to kick off the season, and you're like, really? Already? Right? So it depends. You got to realize that there's only 4 seasons. There's only 10 episodes a season. So 40 episodes sounds like a lot to tell this story. But if they sort of spend time telling other parts of the story, and then other parts of it aren't as fleshed out because of that, it's kind of like they have to pick and choose, like what are the exciting moments they're going to either open up a season with, or end a season with, or just to keep viewers entertained, because there's like a list, there's a long list of events and points that they need to hit, but ultimately they can kind of get to that end goal and end game however they want to, still playing within the bounds of canon. So, for instance, Rhaenyra could take King's Landing, and then it's decided that because the sisters in the Triarchy have come and attacked Corlys's fleet that's blocking the Gullet, right? Rhaenyra has to send out dragon riders to go and take care of that. So you have Nettles, Hugh Hammer, Ulf the White, Jacaerys going to go and fight that battle to defend off the Triarchy ships that are attacking Corlys Velaryon. It doesn't necessarily have to happen first, because like I said, Rhaenyra's on a dragon. She, technically Jace's death is what pushes Rhaenyra to go and take King's Landing because she's no longer afraid to lose anything. She feels like she's already lost everything. So that's what gives her the courage to do it. But you don't necessarily need that motivation for the TV show. You could easily have her character decide, now's the moment, now's the time to do it, right? And let me scroll down to the more recent ones. Mental Skate says, do you think they will make Aegon 2 kids are actually Aemons for the TV show to make a son for a son more deep? I've mentioned that before. Mental Skate, are you AnaaaRodarte? I think Anna, that's your username. Who's a patron of mine. So it's possible. I've mentioned that before, like, wasn't a theory or wasn't a thing at all in the Fire and Blood book. But for the TV show, they kind of made it seem as though Helena and Aemon have a thing. Like, there's several scenes where Aemon and Helena are sort of sitting next to each other, and you kind of wonder, like, hey, are they fucking? And then also, this scene completely made it for the TV show. When Aemon's younger, he tells Aegon, I do my duty. And Aegon says, yeah, but she's weird, man. Like, she's weird as hell, right? Like, does she have to be so weird? And Aemon's like, yeah, but I would do my duty, right? So, when you realize Aegon potentially is hooking up with handmaids when he's like 12 and 13, that extends and keeps going to the part where he's ripping people. So, it wouldn't stand too far to say that he didn't ever consummate his marriage with Helena, or did, and nothing ever came of it. Like, I think people, not to make myself sound like I'm better, right? But before I had kids, right, I would assume if I were to nut inside, yeah, it's going to make a kid. Not necessarily the case. It's actually pretty hard for people to have kids. So that may have been the case. Maybe Aegon and Helena, every time they consummated, which would have only been a few times anyway, because remember, Aegon doesn't really like her. Nothing came of it. She never came with child. But Aemon and Helena, maybe they were doing it often enough where those are potentially his kids. That would probably be something that's sort of hinted at if they do go that route. And you don't never need to put a nail on the head. Just have one scene where Aemon is reacting to the deaths of Helena's children differently than Aegon, or Aegon doesn't really react and he sort of looks at Aemon and Aemon looks back at him. Because, like, remember when Jacaerys asks Helena to dance? Aegon is offended, but he immediately looks towards Aemon and he's like, you see what this nigga's doing? Like, bro, are you going to do something? Kind of like, get your girl, kind of. You know what I mean? So there's several, they're just hinting at it. I feel like that would be the only way they would do that. It wouldn't be a direct confirmation. They're not going to show a scene where they're making out or something. It would just sort of be like, well, dude, those are your kids too. You know what I mean? Kind of. Kevin says, who really killed Aemon 2? The food taster? There's not really a mystery. So in Fire and Blood, it's clear that Aegon is, like, killed via... if you want to be technical, Corlys asks for the poison from Maester Orwell. So Maester Orwell gives Corlys the poison. Corlys gives the poison to someone, and that person puts the poison in Aegon's wine. He doesn't die from eating poison food. He dies from drinking poison wine. Like, literally, he gets into a little, like, what do they call it? Palanquin. This thing that he's being carried by a litter in, this, like, carriage that's being carried by people. He gets into it. He's crippled, remember, because after Rook's Rest, his entire body is maimed, horrifically destroyed, like he's got metal fused to his body. He heals for a year, and then after that, he gets into another fucking dragon battle with Moondancer and Bela and breaks both of his legs. So he literally is just so messed up. Like, he's gonna look exactly like Viserys at the end of season 1, right? And then he gets into his palanquin, and then he drinks his favorite summer red wine, and then he dies. He shows up at the end of his route with blood dribbling from his lips. There's no food taster. There's no food involved. But, like, in my opinion, there's no mystery to it. It's Corlys via Maester Orwell. The reason why Corlys decides to do it is because Aegon refuses to lay down his swords and is still calling sellswords from across the Narrow Sea, prolonging the Dance of the Dragon, making the battle happen even longer than it actually is. So I see we're dropping viewers like left and right. I'm not sure what's going on here, but that seems like a good point to wrap this up. Maybe somebody else potentially started streaming. It's part of the reason why I picked Tuesdays, because no other Song of Ice and Fire person was streaming on Tuesday, and if they started, it was after I had already picked to set my date. So just to be like as fair as possible, because there's like a million Song of Ice and Fire people doing YouTube videos. So let me do a couple more questions. Anthony says, what are you... do a comparison of the characters that we've already seen. What? And was going to see if Cregan's similar to Damon. Do a comparison of characters we've already... Go check out my content. I don't think I've seen you comment that often, Anthony Mazzano. Go check out some of my other videos. I do stuff like that in particular. If you want something like that, go watch my Dornish breakdown, the live stream from last week. A lot of those live streams aren't getting as many views as they were when the show was on. So if a question pops up like that one, where I've done it in the stream, I'm always going to suggest people to go watch those just to try to get some more eyes on those streams. Usually they're like this one in the sense that I prep for them for several days, and like I try to give my best answering questions and proposing theories and explaining what happens in the books. Mental skate, yes sir, it is. Called off work just to watch the stream, a little under the weather, so glad to be on stream. The setup is sick. Thank you, Anna. Sorry you're under the weather. Maybe you drink some chicken soup. I cringe when I know what they will do to Mysaria. It's brutal. So they make Mysaria walk through the streets, and Rhaenyra does this, right? And she said, no, I don't. Rhaenyra doesn't do this. But basically, they say if you can make it to the King's Gate or whatever, and still be alive, you're free to go. And she's like forced to walk through the streets naked or whatever, and like people like stone her to death or something. But that's probably not what's going to happen for for the TV show. That's what happened in Fire and Blood. But for the TV show, they're trying to make her like a people's champion. Like, she's like, this is not the way you treat your people, or whatever she says when she's talking to Sir Otto in that scene. So I feel like her death is probably going to be, it could be similar to that. I just don't know if they're going to go that route, because that's kind of a little, maybe too hardcore for the TV show. All right, so this is a good point to wrap this up. We're almost at an hour and a half. It is a bit early morning. If you end up watching this afterwards, thank you for watching. Obviously, everybody's watching it now. Thank you for watching as well. Just remember, Cregan in the books is a misogynistic dickhead. And on the TV show, he's going to be a likable character because he's a Stark. So it'll be interesting to see how they choose to play certain scenes that are memorable or notable from the books, like his conversations with Allie Blackwood. Also, what he does with Corlys when he first arrives there. Now, technically, Corlys survives the dance and dies of a heart attack on the Serpentine Stairs just a few years after the events of the dance. That's not that interesting for the TV show. For the TV show, maybe he does actually get executed by Cregan. And you could still sort of stick in canon that way. Like, obviously, Alan Oakenfist would potentially lay siege to King's Landing if Cregan does do that, but maybe it could just be like an accident type of thing, and like Alan Oakenfist maybe doesn't have as much influence. I don't know. I'm going too far, but yeah, it'd be cool to have certain deaths, like Alicent dies a few years later from the winter fever, and she hates the color green when she dies, and she curses, sort of everything about the connections to who she was as a character beforehand. But that's after the Dance of the Dragons. So it'd be interesting if maybe instead of dying from the winter fever, maybe she gets fed to Syrax when Rhaenyra takes King's Landing before she leaves. Because there's rumors that Rhaenyra potentially put Alicent and Helena in a brothel and had them raped over and over again by people, right? But feeding her to a dragon would be insane. And then also when Rhaenyra gets fed to a dragon by Aegon, totally would make sense and would make it justified, right? So, I don't know. But thank you all for watching. Hope you have a good rest of your day. And if you're watching this afterwards, please slap a like on it. If you're watching it now, please slap a like on it as well. Consider, oh yeah, the giveaway on Instagram, right? So I'm going to pick a person in the chat right now. Jake W. If you're watching this towards the end, message me on Instagram, but you have to do what I said, which was follow J Fox. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Please consider checking out my Patreon over on patreon.com/HuntsReviews. And also, please subscribe here on YouTube. Along that, and Zeltrizas postar Ixos.